We have a Talbot Express 2.5 diesel, and today's plan is to replace the coolant and give the heater matrix and engine and anything a really good flush. So we're going to make a start by spraying a few hoses. We may remove a little bit of penetrating spray on each of them, and there is a drain point here. It won't hurt plastic. In my experience, it does a very good job of providing lubrication. And one thing I have had soaking, and I will remove this air intake hose just to give you better access. As you can just see it, there is a water pump bleed screw, so I'm going to remove that hose and we'll give you a better view of it. I've had that penetrating fluid for 3 days now, and that's dissimilar metals. It's steel into aluminium, so I'm being very careful and just treating it with kid gloves. So we'll have a go at freeing that off before we start. So we remove the hose and we now have a greater view. We'll just take the little cap off it, and I think we'll put it there for safekeeping. So it's basically a grease nipple in its design, or a brake bleed nipple. So we've treated it with kid gloves for the past 3 days. Let's see if it pays off. I'm going to use an 8mm socket and a T-bar, so we'll just see if the hard work has paid off. No, it's not giving up. Yep, we've done it. Excellent. So that really paid off. You can see we're bleeding a little coolant. So I'm really glad that that's free, and I'm glad I took the time to give it the best chance of undoing as easy as that. So we're now underneath the van and I'm looking at the radiator drain. So we'll just give that a squirt of penetrating fluid and give it a little time to work its magic. The alternative way of draining it is to go for the lower hose. So it's just slightly proud from the base of the radiator, but it's more or less the same deal. The drain is actually lower though, so you will get more coolant out using the drain. And there is also one other drain plug, and you will find it on the front of the engine. We've got the starter motor there, and the radiator is in that direction. It's just slightly off centre, so we'll give that a bit of penetrating fluid and let that soak in. Well, it's now time to see if our preparation has yielded results and we can free everything off. This is the one of the vent plugs for the heater radiator, so I want to see if I can open this before we go any further. Yeah, that opened no bother. You can see a bit of the evidence there. I just did that with my hands. I just needed 2 hands on it. So I've got an old bucket to catch the fluid, and we'll just jump to the engine bay. You can see the tap down there. We'll give that a turn and see what happens. We'll just manoeuvre the bucket under with my foot. Being careful not to use the words kick. Well, that's turning quite well. I haven't applied any tools to these. Maybe just felt a bit stiff there, so we'll go backwards and forth a bit with the penetrating spray just to be careful. And I think that paid off. Things have eased up. It was just a little tight spot. It's a little bit torturous on your fingers. We've endured worse spanner rash than this. See, we're dribbling quite nicely. It's good how they put that cross member underneath for it to dribble on. We don't really have a clean route to the bucket. We can angle it using this, so I'll just rotate. Yeah, we just caught the bucket there, lovely. So we haven't lost too much, we can't account for. So as that's nicely under control, we'll just open up a few other things just to, this breather here. take the cap off, just to see if it alters the flow as I remove the cap. Just to give it the best chance of bleeding. That's the cap just removed. And we'll do the bleeder on the heater matrix too. That's a bit stiff. You take great care not to lose this. So we're going to put these in a very safe place. The objective is to get as much of this old coolant out as possible, and then we'll flush in some clean water. That's been dripping for some time now, so I want to see what we can get out of it. So I'm going to open up the heater radiator pipes. These are the heater radiator pipes, so we've got a flow and a return. So it's going to be a bit tricky to get to, but we're going to have a go at it. What I want to do is flush the heater radiator out whilst I'm doing this, because in my experience of using old vehicles, there is always a dividend to be gained out of flushing it out with a hose pipe and getting it perfectly clean. You know, the heater usually works a little better. I've always noticed an improvement after doing it, so even though I haven't driven this yet, I'm going to be doing exactly the same. So we've sprayed them with penetrating fluid, and I'll just show you what I like to do before I undo any hoses. Just so it gets progressively easier, just get the dipstick and just put a blob of oil on the hoses I intend to undo. So now the flow's just reduced to a dribble on the front cross member. So we'll undo the heater radiator and see if it increases. This pipe's quite stuck, so if we apply any twisting force there, it may go, or if we apply anything twisting force there, we may damage it. So what I'm going to do is just get a tiny little screwdriver and insert it in there really carefully, trying to keep it in contact with the metal at all times. I have sprayed it with some penetrating fluid just to help. I've got my tiny little screwdriver here. I'll just work it round the circumference of the pipe. See, the angle I'm holding it at means I shouldn't really damage the hose. I think if worst comes to worst, this one will get a little shorter. So we're just going in baby steps, freeing it off, and hopefully we'll go more or less full circle. So I'll just try it out with a swan next. I'll just go in, plenty of little movement. I think we're winning. Just go careful. No, I'm not going to risk that. If I go there, I'm on the lip, so that's not a good place to do it. Further to go. So the combination of wiggling and getting in there with a screwdriver, we've freed this heater hose. So it's one down and one to go. So we'll see. Oh yeah, this one's just giving up, fortunately. Oh, there's quite a bit of water coming out of that, and it's a lovely colour. So if you just point these pipes downwards, you will get more water out of them. Let gravity help you out. The flow from the bucket has all but stopped, so we'll go underneath and use the bucket to drain the engine block. Before we do that, we'll just try opening the water pump drain just to see what happens. We'll just let some air through. Oh, that made no difference to the flow. So I've released the engine block drain with an 1/2 inch drive, a ratchet and an extension. I did actually use a hex key, so we'll just see what comes out of it. I may get a shower here. Obviously a dribble. Let's get the bucket ready. Get that dribble going. He says as he gingerly moves the bucket with a view to catching it. I think we're off there. That should be directly below where we're filming. Just back the camera off a little. Don't want to give it a shower. Whoa! And off it goes. Well, I think that definitely pays off to drain that. There is quite a lot of coolant in there, which we would not have got if we hadn't gone to the trouble of doing that. Wow, it's almost as if that's where the bulk of the coolant's been hiding. This is what I meant by a hexagonal 21mm socket, and that's in 1/2 inch drive. And this is exactly what I've used. I had to be really careful with that, you know, to hold it square on the nut. Do not use one of these star points, as it may chew up the nut. Here is the engine block drain plug, complete with copper washer. And you can see why it's tipped to use the hexagonal socket. There's not a great deal of depth there, it's only a couple of mil across. So this is what's came out of it. It's quite a large quantity. That's a builder's bucket, so we're looking at around 3/4 of a builder's bucket. So now we're at the fun part. I've got the hose in here just to flush things, and we're going to flush in the header tank and either heater radiator hose. They're both going to get a flush. I'll try and record what happens for that. So we'll do the heater radiator. Just keep your eye on that one there, that pipe. I'll just introduce the water to its counterpart, and you see it's coming out. I want it to come out clear, so I'll just keep with it till it comes out clear. And then what we'll do is we'll reverse the flow once that happens and flow it out the other way. And we just keep going all the way. See, it's taking a while, isn't it? We're getting quite a lot of rusty, discoloured water out of it. So it is worth doing this. It's always paid off for every vehicle I've owned. So we're clear now. We'll just reverse the flow up. Ooh. There's a risk of getting wet. You can see we've reversed the flow and a little bit of discoloured water did come out, which is good. I'll just secure it with my hands. And I'll just keep going forwards and backwards with them until I know it's definitely clear. I want to be able to drink the water what comes out of there, ideally, hypothetically speaking. So we've now moved the hose to the expansion tank. You can see it going in there. And that's definitely not mountain spring clean, is it? It's a real mess. As this is a diesel engine, I can be a little less cautious than with a petrol equivalent. I don't have a distributor or any ignition system to worry about, other than basic fuel timing and combustion. So we'll continue like that. It has been going for around a minute, so it is worth taking your time at this step. And we're still going with this. Could be 30 years worth of rusty material what's coming out of this. We're about 5 minutes in and it's still coming out discoloured, so more persistence required. Well, that's the radiator. You can see that water is coming out discoloured, so it is doing the job of flushing the radiator and the block, which is quite reassuring. Well, it's been around 10 minutes and we're coming out almost clean now. Let's try blocking things up and just increase the pressure ever so slightly. I mean, worst case scenario, you get a bit of water in the face. Yeah, I would say that's slightly discoloured coming out, so that paid off. I'll just keep doing things like that. I'm going to send the hose up there in this breather. You can see there's discoloured water in there. We're going to do everything we can. It's still coming out slightly discoloured at the rad, so we need to put a bit more effort into this. I was just pushing a bit of water in at the swirl pot, and got some lovely dark water out the engine block. You can just see it, very rusty. So we now have a flow of clear water everywhere but the radiator. You can see it's slightly discoloured as it's coming out, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the engine drain back in and then reflush, so more water comes out here it forces some gunge out, hopefully. So that's actually got more chance of flushing now. We've just put that in finger tight, and I've noticed if I block this one off with my finger, we do get a little bit more flow through it. Yeah, we've definitely got a trickle now, so I'll just keep blocking that off. I just want to keep going till that's clear, because I've got this theory, like wherever there is, you know, rubbish water, rusty water, it always seems to find its way into the heater radiator of the vehicle and reduce its performance. Well, I've unscrewed the radiator plug just to give it the best chance. I'll just show you the plug. It's quite good. I could have done that originally instead of directing it, but it did give us a good degree of control over where the water went. I've just got some dirty water in here. This is the breather for the heater matrix. So I've noticed if I put the hose pipe there and hold it on as best I can, we do reverse flush it there. So that was clean previously. So that's something to consider. There's quite a lot of dirty water coming out of that actually, but it did flow clean as you saw in the earlier footage. Well, we now have clear water, so I'll just scrunch the top radiator hose pipe and see if it remains clear. See, by pumping we do make a difference. So the next thing to do is to drain, undo the engine drain plug which we've put in finger tight. That water is indeed coming out slightly discoloured, so a little more flushing required before we put the new good stuff in. So we'll refit the engine drain plug and the radiator drain plug. I do have a little tip for that. This is my observations. I was underneath trying to put this in, and you see there's not a great deal of length of it to it. You can see my fingers, and you're not actually, the engine's on a bit of a slant. So my little tip is to get a socket, 21mm in this case. This is the hex socket as I covered earlier in the video. Place this in. There's actually a bit of kitchen roll in this socket, so it's a little bit springier, and then we can kind of push in the hole and twist. We've got a bigger surface area to twist, and it made it a lot easier for me. It could be of value to you. So we've hand tightened the engine drain plug and the radiator one, so the next logical thing to do is reconnect the heater hoses. I'll say it is optional whether you flush your heater or not, but there are dividends in it, as I've found out. Everything's now fitted with the hose reconnected and the drains in place. We should only have these two items to look at. So the advice with older vehicles is to use the blue antifreeze. This should give us around 2 years protection. Yeah, I picked this up on eBay. It was in the region of £1 a litre. So it's a big can, so we'll siphon a little off. So we've now got 5 litres of antifreeze, so we'll start filling it up. To ease the task of filling the reservoir, I've painstakingly crafted a funnel so we can minimise the spillages, hopefully. It's best to fill it up slowly. Let's get a good little trickle going. If you go too far, you'll see blue fluid coming out the pipe to the left, which means it's clean out the overflow there. So just gently keep adding the liquid. So we've got 5 litres in, and could be time to add the other 5. We'll see what we get in. Well, put another couple of litres in and then we could hear the gurgling sounds, so I stopped. So I'll have another go at it. Hopefully you can hear the gurgling sounds. At all times I'm keeping an eye on this pipe here because that is the overflow, so we'll just literally be pouring antifreeze onto the ground, which will be a terrible waste. So we have in the region of 1.5 litres left, but we've got some bleeding to do, so we may need that. Okay, so we can hear quite a bit of gurgling coming from here. We can keep just topping bits up, but one thing I want to do is just scrunch these hoses. So we're now over the 10 litre mark, and I'm just checking the drain here. Well, the drain had a little tiny drip which I've arrested by turning the plug a little more. I did actually think I'd got it tight enough. I do believe it dripped on camera just then. See the engine drain plugs in quite well, so I'm pleased with that. There's no blue antifreeze, just a bit of residual rusty colour. So I'll just have a visual check on the heater pipes, and they're very good. So we'll proceed on to the next item, which is bleeding. So what I've done is I've connected a hose to the water pump bleed, just so we can see if any air comes out. Rather than just seeing it gushing, we'll see the tube and it'll trap some air in, and I thought it'd just be better, you know. What I'm doing is a similar exercise to the brake bleeding, but if we don't get any air kind of in between the water, you'll know you just have to crack it open and see water. I had some air gushing then. Oh, good. Ooh. Seems to be fighting me. You can see it's just water coming out, so that's pretty good, that. Yeah, just clear water. So we'll nip that up. We'll call that bled. It's about as tight as I'm going to go with it. Can replace the cap and reinstate the air intake that I moved earlier in the video. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm just going to be squeezing on this hose with two hands, and I'm going to cover this drain hole here with my finger. So we're going to try and get a bit more air out of it. I've just put a zip tie on there so my fingers aren't in the way. So what I'm going to do now is squeeze the lower hose. So I'm just alternating between the upper hose and the lower hose. You can see the air bubbles are coming out. So I think I'm getting it to the stage where I can confidently start the engine, let the thermostat open up. Well, I think it's best to bleed what you can cold and then start the engine after. All this, incidentally, has been done on a cold engine. So I'm going to start the engine in a bit. That's the upper hose, which I've been squeezing. And there is a lower hose down there. Both go to the water pump, that area there. So we'll start the engine, and I'll probably do the same with the engine running. This is an optional step. I'm willing to take the risk. Obviously we've got moving belts, things like that, so do be very careful. I don't want anybody getting injured. I'll be squeezing the upper hose there and the lower hose right down there, far away from any moving parts. I started the van up, and a bit of a scrunching occurred, and then this started dribbling away, so we've just put the bung back in it. So we're just going to let the van run up to temperature till both those radiator hoses are hot, and hopefully it is blowing nice warm air in the cabin. This hose is beginning to warm up. I can definitely feel some heat, so the thermostat has now opened, which is great, but I'm going to keep going until this is a lot warmer. Well, we're in the cabin now, and we can just start to feel the hot air coming through, so we'll just continue a bit further. The temperature gauge as yet hasn't budged, so I'll keep an eye on that one. Quite a lot of time. Apologies for the noise. Just keep squeezing the pipe and getting even more air out of it. Just a perpetual thing as it warms up. Persistence is obviously key. So we've now got lovely hot air coming out of the blowers, and the temperature has increased a little. So there's one job left to do, and that's put the radiator cap back on and have a good check for any leaks. So coolant wise, we have used a little over 12 litres. So I think what I'll do is I'll top this bottle back up, and I will just keep it in the motorhome just in case it needs a top up after it's run, because quite often you can do your best to bleed everything, go for a run, and then an airlock comes out. Hopefully that won't happen in this case, but I can't guarantee it, and I want to be prepared just in case of that eventuality. So one thing I want to do is measure out the quantity of the old coolant that I collected and see what the volume of that is. Well, it appears I may have lost a couple of litres of antifreeze, as we're running in the region of 10 litres which I've removed. So we're 2 litres astray for some bizarre reason, so the only thing I can assume is it went in the driveway. Many thanks for watching, and why not subscribe to learn of more repair possibilities.